Hello, fellow project managers, scrum masters everywhere. What is MVP? Can you define MVP? Minimum viable product? How about PSI? Let's talk about these terms today and put some more clarity around them so that we can help those getting ready for the exam. If you have a definition of PSI or MVP, I would like to know. Put it in the comments below, your organic definition, okay? But for now, let's take a look at these terms. Here's the lay of the land. When you're working on a new product, service, or some other result, you first of all should do some experiments to understand how the customer perceives what you are proposing to complete. We call this the minimum viable product. It's the minimum amount of product or the minimum amount of effort you need to put in to get the maximum amount of feedback. For example, if you're thinking of building a website, just build a landing page and find out if the look and the feel, the design, is what the customer is thinking. That's an example of minimum viable product. Or perhaps you'd like to start a business called Uber Eats, where strangers deliver hot food to you. Why not test out the idea by having strangers first deliver food by hand? That's a way of getting the maximum amount of feedback about an idea without having to build the entire app. That takes us to the question of PSI. The potentially shippable increment is the shippable increment you get at the end of an iteration. It is not always going to be released at the end of a sprint. In fact, you could have several PSIs at the end of several sprints put together to create one release. So it's not a release, it's an increment which could be released or maybe not, depending on how featured it is. Now that language takes us to MMF. What is the minimum amount of feature that we need to have in a product to release it into the market space? If you do not have enough feature in a product, it would not make sense for you to create a release. And that takes us to the next terminology. It would not make sense for you to even create a product until it has enough features to be marketable. So let's take a look at these four one more time. At the very beginning, we should carry out an MVP to know if the idea will even fly in the market. If it does, we create increments, potentially shippable increments that meet the definition of done at the end of each iteration. The number of PSIs that we need to have for it to be released as a feature set is what we would call the minimum marketable feature. And when you have enough features to release a product for the very first time, we would refer to this as minimum marketable product. So the MVP informs the MMF and the PSI. The PSI is part of the MMF, and of course, the minimum amount of features that you put in the market is part of the entire product. So you could say there's a lot of interchange between these four terminologies. But for your PMP exam, if you're thinking of the PMP, MVP and PSI are the two I would strive to understand. MMF and MMP, those are good, quite straightforward, but I wouldn't really expect to see those on the test, but you just never know. I hope this helps you. All the very best. Bye for now.